So, I'm just going to give my thoughts on the Masayoshi Son interview that I was looking at yesterday. And so, basically, I'm just going to read off the notes that I had. so, Masayoshi Son, he basically said the three things that have mattered in our industry are the computing CPU power, the size of memory, and communication speed. He says these things have proved super important in the last 30 years. And then he said, he begs the question, what would have happened as these technologies continue to improve, especially with AI? Um, my thoughts on that are that, we'll have very significant advances in human history if the computing CPU power, the size of memory, and communication speed increase because we're becoming increasingly more communicative. We're more connected now more than ever. Like back then, especially in the 1900s, our ancestors, the early 1900s, our ancestors didn't really have access to all these resources, but now they do. Like he said we had these improvements in CPU power, the size of memory, and communication speed in the last 30 years. So that's very significant. And then he goes on to say that AI will be the biggest revolution in history. I completely agree. I want to be on the right side of history. When everybody asks me what I want to do, that is exactly what I tell them. I say the same exact thing. And then the interviewer asked him why. This is by the way, this is a CNBC Masayoshi Son interview that I was watching. It was about 45 minutes long. And then he goes on to say that AI will be the biggest revolution in history because mankind has been the most smart and powerful human beings on Earth. But now we are able to create devices and systems that will be much smarter than ourselves. And so if we have inventions that are much smarter than ourselves, then it becomes a threat to our existence. Um, he says, we have always been deemed as the smartest human beings, but we have now created something that can end up being smarter than ourselves. Every industry will be redefined. Or I think what he means to say, a better way of saying that is every industry would be disrupted. The interviewer says, what do you see when you look forward 20 to 30 years from now? He says he sees things flying, flying cars, fewer car accidents. We'll be living much longer. We'll be healthier. We'll be curing more diseases. Cancer will no longer be a disease that we'll have to be afraid of because of artificial intelligence. Autonomous driving will less the amount of accidents that will occur. And he says, what will happen to people if machine? The interviewer asked him, what will happen to people if machines become smarter? Um, so his take on that, and I think that's a big question, a big thing that many people are worried about. But his take on that was that, you know, he's very relaxed. He has a very relaxed opinion, relaxed and optimistic, because he's like, this is what Masayoshi-san responded to that. He said, humans will still have art, entertainment, creativity, and more communication. He says we will help each other more human-like jobs will always come up. He does say, interviewer does say, well, Elon Musk is concerned about AI. Why aren't you, or what do you think? And then, like I said, he says he's optimistic. He thinks we'll adapt, and he makes a really good comparison. He says in the past 100 years, most jobs were farming jobs. Now only 5% of jobs are farming jobs, or and then most of those 5% are in India. Those 5% farming jobs, and so we basically made a transition. Now we're in the Industrial Revolution age, and we've already adapted to that. So he said we'll adapt, and depending on location, we'll adapt accordingly, just like India and basically the rest of the world. And so he says, well, the interviewer asks, well, what happens since AI will be smarter than us to take our jobs? He just kind of pushes the question further to Masayoshi, and Masayoshi responds, we will still create, we'll still be creative, we will create. He says we have to have some sort of income just to live. Um, um, and he said for that to happen, things would get more exciting, and then he makes another example. He says, the Roman Empire was so rich that they had servants, people to support the Roman citizens. They outsourced a lot of things, and they had so much abundance when it came to, they had free wine, they had free bread. And, he said even then with all of those resources and based on that history lesson, they still discussed, they still talked about politics, they talked about a new frontier and a lot of things. And this is Masayoshi's comparison of AI to take it over the workforce. Um, so, he says we'll still be enjoying our lives and we'll still be relaxing, even though AI will come and, it will institute a lot of disruption because he has over $70 billion invested in AI. He's the richest man in Japan, but he has arguably the most amount of investments in AI across 1,000 different companies. Um, and so the interviewer asked him, "Well, will we merge with machines? Will we merge with machines into our brains?" And then Masayoshi responds, "Well, right now we have search engines, we have computer tablets, that we used to not have to, you know, before we didn't have those things, so we couldn't look up certain information. But those are a type of, they are a type of artificial intelligence for us because although they're not in our brains, we can use our phones, our laptops, our computer devices, all of these things to basically look up information in, just a couple of seconds. So he's saying like we're getting closer and closer to that actually happening. Our brains merging with um, computer chips or AI chips, and then we'll be, super intelligent human beings. And I'm actually fascinated by that. I think when the time comes, if and when the time comes, like I would definitely be down to merge my brain with a computer chip. So and just to see what happens. Maybe I'm getting closer to that time to pass away and go to heaven. Then like, of course, I would be down to give this a try. I'd sign up and put me on the list. I'd be probably maybe one of the first few that would want to do it. I don't know, but we'll just have to see when we get closer. Um, the interviewer asked him then, "Do you see people having uniform income?" And Masayoshi responds, he thinks a basic universal income will be interesting to make a living, but on top of that, he thinks people will still be competitive for excitement and scarce resources. So, um, the interviewer asked him, "Well, what do you think will be the source of excitement then? Since everything would just be given to us." Um, and then Masayoshi, he gets a little funny here. He says he thinks the robots will catch fish for us. They'll help us, and they'll help us so that the things that we need with basic universal income will be easily accessible because of the AI machines. He says companies will be the largest. He says his company plans on being the largest renewable energy provider. He is seeing the declining cost of electricity very quickly. He thinks that when energy costs are so cheap, it will provide the power to function with the smart robot to harvesting things so that the food we have to eat will be almost costless. So the basic stuff we will need will become so much of a lower cost, um, and a much better standard and a much better standard of living for us. And so then the next question was, what investments best encompasses and reflects the world that you think about with artificial intelligence? So the interviewer was basically asking, what investments have you made that do you think are so intelligent or very good um, investments? And then he says he thinks that with SoftBank and the Vision Plan, or I think it was the Vision Fund, I may have messed that up, that he used to invest in the past, 70 companies in the past year are AI centric. So basically, there's been 70 major companies that he's invested in the past year, and he thinks that those are his greatest investments so far with the revolution of AI. And I'll just stop to say that I think that this interview is super important, and I didn't just find it by chance because my views is that I want to be just like Masayoshi. I want to be the biggest investor in these technologies within the next 10 to 20 years, so that I can say that I was the one that invested, the most in these technologies and help so many people, you know, get these diseases cured, like cure cancers, help a lot of people, make sure people are in good, healthy conditions, people have better food, people have access to more resources, things that they couldn't obtain in the past because they didn't have enough money. I want to eliminate those reasons for people to not be health, for eliminate poverty, bad health circumstances for people, and make sure people get the resources that they need by investing in companies that can help these people and help them get back on their feet, because and then I want to hit the biggest problem that we'll have, because the biggest problem means you have the biggest impact. And so that's why I thought that this interview so far is just super important. Um, but I'll add that as a conclusion. I probably should have added that as a conclusion later. Anyway, he said another one of his companies, we work as a working community. So when Facebook came, Masayoshi said people didn't understand Facebook at first, and that's the same way he feels about his WeWork company. He says it is a community, a relationship with friends and family you haven't met yet, and you become friends with the power of the internet. He says WeWork has almost 500,000 members, and if you're a startup company, for example, he says you'll need designing. He explains the company here. He says you'll need design, product design, accountants, shipping services, lawyers, and many things that is outside of your basic employee's expertise. And so he says, with the WeWork membership, the individuals at WeWork can use AI to help companies achieve the resources that they need. For example, Amazon gives you a recommendation to buy other related items based on what you have bought. He thinks AI and WeWork can recommend resources, meetings between people of startups, and the community recommendations of WeWork will make cost of offices go down by 40% in cost. He thinks because of this, employee satisfaction will increase dramatically because of the company. Masayoshi thinks that WeWork is losing money right now because they are growing fast, much like Netflix and Facebook did in the beginning. And he says the reason for that is because of a recurring subscription by users. And then this is just me repeating what I was just saying. He says Facebook was even losing money after their IPO for a while, but he says customer acquisition and innovation is flat at first. But the revenue of continuing subscription after a while will give huge profit to the company. He says WeWork in Japan is already profitable after only a year. He doesn't want his investors to get too happy with the companies they are investing in. As in, he doesn't want his investors to put too much money in just one company and just focus on that one company and think that they'll have the biggest impact. He says WeWork, for example. Oh wait, I'll take that back. He says he also doesn't want to get too happy and invest in companies as well, so it's vice versa. He has invested over $8 billion in WeWork already. And then the interviewer asked him, "Do your investors have influence over you?" And he talks to his investors, and he says he has contractual right, and his investors were the first believers in his vision. And so he says his investors respect him and he honors them back. Actual investment decisions and actions are done by him and his investors. He says that anything up to $3 billion per portfolio has to be communicated between him and his investors, while anything over a $3 billion investment can be used autonomously without consent from other investors. Also, it says here that he was thinking about creating another vision fund. And then the interviewer asked him, "How much have you invested?" He says around $70 billion has been invested. The banks are wishing to support them for extending leverage because the value of their asset has grown with a mature value. The interviewer asked, when will he be done investing? He says they will continue to measure opportunities and invest into their next investments. He says he's getting a lot of inbound calls to invest in more things, especially in Silicon Valley. He says he has inflated the value of many companies because of his investments. And then the interviewer asked him, "Well, since you've inflated the value of many companies because you've been investing in them so far, what do you think about that? You could be giving them, all of this, praise based on investing in their companies and increasing the value of their companies, but they may not deliver." And Masayoshi continues to say, "Well, everybody wins. Value of companies, the value of the companies he invests in and the value of his company increases." And so he just thinks it's a win-win situation. Then the interviewer asked him about the NVIDIA trade, and Flipkart getting sold to Walmart. And then, I guess I didn't put enough information there. I think he says he was just excited about it. It's stated in the interview. And then the interviewer asked him, what has he been seeing lately? He says he's been seeing very exciting opportunities every day. The interviewer asked, "What's the most important investment decision you use to measure business?" He says he checks the business model. It has to be exciting, and it has to be an exciting, disruptive model. And he also says the total accessible market has to be big enough. He says they have to have a growing customer base. And then he goes on to say that he's only investing in businesses with at least $100 million valuations, which is basically the later stage. He explains further in the interview that there's the earlier stages of a startup company, like the first and second stage, and that's when companies are being evaluated between 0 to 10, 0 to 20, 0 to 50. But he says he only invests in the later stage, not the seed or earlier stages. He invests in the later stage when companies get to at least $100 million in their valuation, because then he sees that there's enough growing base, that basically meets his qualifications of an exciting, disruptive model, a growing customer base, and they've had success in their companies. Um, and then the interviewer asked, "Do you think will Uber become more profitable with autonomous abilities?" He thinks that it's a yes. He says autonomous driving is coming no matter what. The cost of providing the service will get dramatically more efficient, in which people will have fewer accidents. Not zero, but a huge reduction. And then the last thing that I have here is that Masayoshi says he would like SoftBank to make the biggest contribution to human evolution, and that is exactly what I believe in. I think that a lot of people should have resources, and people should, um, a lot of people don't have water, a lot of people don't have access to food, a lot of people don't have access to shelter, the basic thing, the basic things. And there's a lot of social justice issues that could be fixed. Discrimination, racism, sexism, prejudice, um, and then like industry things like you know a big part of artificial intelligence is going to be helping big businesses or businesses that are actually taking the revolution seriously, because they're going to be the ones that have the biggest impact. Big companies means they solve big problems for people, and big problems need to be solved for people so that people can live more healthier and happier lives. And the only way we can do that is if people actually take artificial intelligence, augmented reality, augmented reality, blockchain, drones, the Internet of Things, virtual reality, um, and what was the last one? Oh yeah, robotics and 3D printing. Everybody needs to take these concepts seriously, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, because if they don't, we have a lot of issues to worry about. And I just think people should live happier and healthier lives and get access to resources that they deserve, because they are human beings just like the rest of us. So yeah, that concludes my interview. Just keeping it short and sweet, and I'm gonna upload this one, and there'll be many more to come.